Hey, good evening, my friends, and welcome to another edition of Wednesday Night Live with me, Mike Avery, here in my home office. I got to be honest, it's getting a little cluttered. It's a little messy. I need to clean some things up. I bet your workspace might be a little bit messy now too, especially this time of year with everything going on. A lot of fishing. That's what I've been doing, and need to do some work around here. Uncle Johnny, how you doing, buddy? Nice to have dinner and a beer with you last night. Randy, good evening. How are you? Hello, Joe. Nice to have you along with us. Corey, my evening is going well. How about you? Hello, Craig. Let's go fishing. Brian, I got that Facebook message from you. Thank you for the pictures, and I didn't realize that connection you were talking to me about. Patrick. Hello, John. Ed. Again, we got to get you out fishing. Hey, Tony, how you doing, buddy? So I um I was thinking about yesterday, and you said you could see my boat. What? What? Oh, no, 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 no. I don't. It's not supposed to do that. Um, I'm. Tr- I know I've seen your boat before, but I can't picture it. I'd like to, if we're out there within sight, I'd like to know it's you. Dennis, good evening. How are you? Appreciate you joining me on this edition of Wednesday Night Live with me, Mike Avery, here at my home office. I am Tony. I'm fishing tomorrow. And I'm fishing Friday. Tomorrow, I have two of the four grandkids going out. I didn't even check the weather. Last I saw, the winds were a light southwest. Getting a little bit of a late start. I got to go upriver and fuel up the Angler Quest first, and we'll go out and fish for a few hours. Hello, Dave. How you doing, buddy? Michael, Bernie. And then Friday, I'm fishing with Art Lewis, or I'm taking Art Lewis of WSGW, Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner, and Michael Hensley of Go Great Lakes Bay. Rick, good evening. How are you? And then I'm starting to slow down, although the fishing is holding up pretty well. I mean, like, I got no complaints. Can you believe that this weekend is the last weekend in July? Where in the world is the summertime going? Kids are going back to school here in a matter of weeks. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. You know what? It would be fun, Tony, if you could come fishing with me sometime. Office clutter. Glad it's not a two-way camera. Well, I can see some things behind me that need to be straightened up. And actually, there's a lot of things in this office I can just pitch. You know how it is. After a while, it's just time to clean things out. Bernie says, quite a storm today, lost power. We had a storm go through today as well. Exactly, John says, crazy. Next thing you know, it's deer season, and it's the first of the year. And John, you and your dad, did we lock up on me? See you and your dad at Bill Piles in Ohio. Linda says lots of storms in Ann Arbor. I just talked to my daughter. She's downstate. She said there were a lot of trees down too. Jim, things are going well. How about you in Tennessee? Has it cooled down there at all, or is it still incredibly hot? Saw a picture posted of a cougar in Kent County that was posted on Facebook. Do you know of any updates? I don't believe it, Patrick. I'm telling you right now. I don't believe it. No, I don't know anything about it. I didn't see the pictures, but I don't believe it. Headed up to White River. Hey, that's got it. You got to have, Dave, a little thing in the back of your mind every time you go back up there. Let me just see if I can find it. Facebook. Kent County, Michigan. Cougar. Oh, a Grand Rapids woman. This is through TV8. A Grand Rapids woman says she spotted a cougar near Rothbury, but the DNR isn't so sure. Let's see a picture. Let's see a picture. Previous comments, because I don't believe it, not for one stinking minute. This post doesn't have a picture. People see a cat, they think it is a cougar. People see a coyote, they think it's a wolf. Just a second. Oh, let's see here. Ted, good evening. How are you? Hello, Corey. Headed to the Two Hearts Saturday. Don Krejak from Krejak said, listen, folks, if you want a good meal in your Bay City area, go to Krejak's house on the south end of Bay City. It is a treat. Jerry, good evening. How are you? Now, a bear in Breckenridge, I have no problem believing that at all. I mean, that's not a stretch at all. We got bears here in my part of the woods, my neck of the woods. In fact, Dave, you know where Nick lives? Just not too far from you. He had a bear on his trail camera behind the house. Mad Jack, good evening. How are you? Scott says, yeah, lots of cougars chasing young men. That's about the extent of it. Dave is headed back to the Bay this weekend. Had a blast fishing the tournament last Monday. A lot of fun. You know what, Joe? Even with a picture, I don't believe it because, like I said, people see large house cats, they see bobcats, they think it's a cougar, they see a coyote, they think it's a wolf. I just no. Danny Johnson, how are you? How are things in South Dakota? That says he'd rather see snow. Jim says it's still hot, upper 90s the rest of the week. Scott says he loves Krejak House frog legs. Jim checking in from Gladwin. Dave says not on his trail camera. This was a few weeks ago, maybe even like 6 weeks ago, Dave, in the spring. Tommy, good evening. How are you, buddy? Lots of bucks on your trail cameras. People getting excited about the upcoming deer season. I can't get there. I can't be excited. I mean, eventually, I guess I will, but I just can't get too excited about it right now. I think, Erica, how are things in the thumb? Whoop. I'll tell you what. Oh, I see what you're saying. All equals out. I can't figure out, Rick. Did you hear more about the woman and the wolf up in the UP? I can't figure out if I can't figure that thing out. I have tried to reach out to the woman secondhand because I can't reach her directly, but I've tried to reach out to her secondhand and I can't. She won't respond. So without talking to her directly, I'm a little bit reluctant and hesitant to say anything. Evening, Chris. How are you? Scott says, bring on the perch. Bernie says you're tagged walleye. How often has that happened for you? I've caught tagged walleye on the bay, never caught a walleye with a transmitter. Art Lewis, who was fishing with me Friday, said there are turkeys in his backyard right now. I bet it's not you, Tony. It might be on my end because I see I was freezing up a little bit too. Edgar says he'd rather be a Youper. Johnny's over at Andy's. If I lived across the street or like 100 yards from Andy's like Johnny does, I'd be at Andy's too. Have fun, Johnny. It was Jason. John, I suspect you know Jason. Actually, what happened, and I don't know, I just put a post on the Facebook page, but we got that fish with a transmitter, and I actually wasn't looking real close because at that time we'd just gone through a school of fish. There was a flurry of activity. I was doing something else, netting a fish or setting a line or something. I didn't pay a lot of attention to it, but the guy said, "Hey, we got a fish with a thing sticking out the bottom of it." Well, it's a tag that designates a transmitter. So I'd never had one before, and so I texted Randy Claremont, who is the director of the fisheries department division for the Michigan DNR. He said, throw that thing in the live well and keep it. He said, then call Jason Gosto. So we ended up talking to Jason. And actually I said, Jason, you know, it looked like the stitches in that fish were fairly fresh. Now you're telling me that fish was tagged May 11th. We caught it July 25th. Should we have let that fish swim around and collect more data, however you want to say it? Because I did catch some grief from people online saying, oh, you should have thrown it back. Well, I'm thinking, okay, you guys are Facebook and Instagram experts, right? You're like online biologists. I deal with the fisheries chief for the DNR and the head fisheries biologist for Saginaw Bay. That's who I get my information from. And they both said, "Oh no, throw that fish in the live well, collect it, give us the data, eat the fish, and enjoy." It was in the belly, Jason. I didn't personally fillet that fish, but where the belly was, I don't think it'd be a problem at all. Good evening, Dan. How are you? Second week of deer camp. I was not able to get Jason. I reached out to him. He was in a meeting. So I just relayed what he had told me. Dennis says cougars are real in the lower. I've seen them twice. Once with my family. The trappers and hunters that I hang with have seen them along the Rifle River watershed. We know the obvious difference between a bobcat and a cougar. Not going to argue with the Dennis, and you sound like a very knowledgeable man. So, you and your buddies, trappers, they're going to know. I'm just saying, though, when I see a report on Facebook about a cougar in Kent County, I'm not buying it. Bruce, good evening. Mitchell, good evening. Yeah, he seems like it. I don't know him really well, John, but he seems like it. Why would you do that? I've had a couple of people say, why don't you just take that transmitter and put it on a truck and drive it around? Why? For what purpose? Just to be a jerk? Why? Art Lewis says, what tastes better, small walleye or a big one like we caught the other day? The small ones are better, but the big ones aren't. They're still going to be darn good. I mean, we caught a 25.5-inch tank the other day, third biggest one so far this year. How was the tournament? The Angler Quest tournament was wonderful. Oh, it's just a joke. All right, Scott, I get it. It's hard sometimes when I'm sitting on this end, whether people are just joking around. So listen, I appreciate the fact you said it's a joke, and forgive me for my comments, because there's some weird people out there. Marlette, Mike, how are things in Marlette? Elmer, how are things in Petoskey? Who won the tournament? Martin Roble and his family won the tournament. Martin Roble. We weighed in our 5 fish. Our biggest fish was 3 pounds. And I'll be honest with you, for the Angler Quest tournament, we never fished deeper than 6 feet of water. Watching from Ukraine. God bless you. Where's the hot spot for perch right now? I don't know. Yes, Scott. Then I would have understood that it was a joke. An LOL or a smiley face. Then I would have keyed into it. Okay. So this weekend's the last weekend in July. I've been a fishing fool. I fished 4 days in the last week, and I'm going to fish, I think, 4 days this week. Oh, yeah. That's real skinny water. In fact, we were up as shallow as like 3.9 feet. Who would think that in late July, you'd find fish in 4 feet of water? No problem, Johnny. Have fun. We got our fish yesterday, 13 to 14 feet of water. And I was with the vets from Outdoor Driven, which was really wonderful and rewarding. I got to tell you what, too. I've said this many times, and I'll say it many more times. One of the true regrets of my life is I didn't serve in the military. If I could go back and redo anything in my life, it would be that. Or that's one of the things I would redo. So I have much respect for people who did serve. So whenever I can help out in any little way, I like to. That's why I was real glad to be associated now and in some loose partnership with the guys at Outdoor Driven. And to hear their stories. Listen, I just sat back there and early on in the fishing trip before everybody loosened up, I just sat in the back of the boat and I ran rods and I just listened because I don't have anything to add to the conversation. You got 3 veterans who have seen 3 combat veterans, Iraq and Afghanistan, multiple tours, and they're telling stories back and forth. I got nothing to add to that. So I just listened. And I was in such awe of these guys and such respect, and to be able to spend a day on the water with them was a real blessing. Hey, good evening, Mark. How you doing, buddy? Linda says in 4 feet of water during daylight hour. You've seen them coming at night to chase bait fish. And that's the thing of it, isn't it, Linda? You nailed it. If a walleye is going to come into 4 feet of water in the daylight, he's there for one reason. He's there to feed. That's why they're so much fun, because they're aggressive. You know where they are. They're in that 4 foot water column, right? You go out 25 feet. Where are they? 4 feet. You know where they're at. You can target all 4 feet. They're aggressive. You can put your baits real close behind the offshore boards. When you get a bite, you know it. Although the fish yesterday, even out deeper, were very aggressive too. Front hook right in the middle of the mouth. You know how sometimes when they're just kind of like nipping at it, they'll get the back hook and maybe, now these are front hook, center of the mouth. They were going after these baits, which is a great bite. Hopefully, we'll see the same thing tomorrow. John says at his tournament in the Bay, July 16th, my coin caught a nice in less than 2.5 feet of water. I believe it, John. Absolutely, I believe it. Ricky, good evening. How are you? What's the amen to? And for the vets? Yeah, yeah. I mean, these guys are telling stories that are just, and I'm thinking, I've never had to go through anything like that in my life. And these guys were really young guys at the time. Art says you do have something to add. Thank you for your service. God bless. Yeah. Well, and I try to tell every veteran that I run into that. Good evening, Chris. How are you? Thanks for joining me on this edition of Wednesday Night Live. My name is Mike Avery. This is Wednesday Night Live. I do it every Wednesday night live at 7:00 on my Facebook page, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Twitter. I used to do them over on Vimeo, not anymore. I'd like to add Instagram, and I'd like to add Threads, the new platform from Instagram. But so far, they will not allow that. But I'm working on it. As soon as they allow it, I will do it. What else? Hey, Brent, how you doing, buddy? I'm getting to it, Kevin, but thanks for the reminder. I talked about the big 25.5 inches. That's a good fish. All right, this weekend's rundown, because Kevin wants to know. Inquiring minds want to know. My first guest this week, Don Miller of Miller's Motor City Muskies, millersportfishing.com, talks about muskie fishing on Lake St. Clair. Then Andrew Cumtus, who is the guy behind Outdoor Driven. I did Andrew a disservice. No pun intended. I had a 6-minute block, a 6-minute segment at the end of the first hour. And I said, Andrew, you want to join me? And in my mind, it was just going to be a real quick wrap up, synopsis, overview of who Andrew is and what Outdoor Driven is all about. And I was going to let him know it was a short segment. Well, I forgot to let him know it was a short segment. So he thinks he's going on for 15 minutes or so. So I had to really honestly cut him off right in the middle of a segment. It wasn't fair to him. He did a good job, but I always feel bad about that. And I do hear comments from people, oh, Avery, you cut your guest off. Sometimes sometimes I run out of, and Art knows this, when you run out of time in a segment, you got to go regardless. Oftentimes, when I cut my guests off, it's because I made an error and I asked them a question too late in the segment and didn't give them time to answer. Sometimes they just decide to get long-winded, and that happens too, but more often than not. But when I cut people off, I'm not trying to be rude. It's part of broadcasting. When that clock goes tick, 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 or from your perspective, tick, 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 boom, and it's done, I got to be done. Terry says it's warm in Shingleton. I bet it is. Mark, last week you were talking about running into the net. I'm ignorant of netting rules. Can they put them anywhere? Tribal nets can only go so far south, Mark. The non-tribal commercial guys have a lot more leeway. This net was plainly marked. In fact, it's still out there. I think there might be two of them out there now. When I was out yesterday, I noticed that it's still there. Although now that I know it's there, I didn't troll into it, but it is still there. I don't know what he's got that net in there for. I don't know what it would be. Art says the clock is our master. Good question, Robert. Will the storms that we saw today affect where you fish tomorrow? They won't affect where I fish tomorrow, Robert, but they will affect the fishing tomorrow. In my experience, a shallow water fishery like Saginaw Bay and a squirrely fish to begin with, like a walleye, when you get a thunderstorm that comes through, they'll oftentimes bite just like crazy before the storm. But after a storm, they get squirreled up. I don't know if it's the lightning. I don't know if it's the thunder. I don't know if it's the change in barometric pressure, but they get squirreled up. So I don't expect tomorrow is going to be a great day, but we're going to give it our best. Hey, Adam, how are you? Yeah, how's it going? You only need long-winded guests to fill your time. Well, yes, but that's a double-edged sword too, Tim. Have I heard any more on consent decree? We're just waiting. Speaking of long-winded guests, let me get back to this week's rundown. Not that they're long-winded, except for the guy in the third hour. In the second hour, Larry Jennings of Jonah Jigs talks about jigging for king salmon. You know, everybody trolls for salmon or maybe throws crankbaits in the river. Larry jigs for them as they come through the drowned river mouths. Adam Bump from the DNR talks about some changes in the pheasant release program for this fall. He says, no, it's not like the old put and take. This week's Ask Avery segment deals more with that transmitter that I found that we caught yesterday. Some more information that I found out. For example, where it was tagged, when it was tagged, and did we do the right thing by taking that fish out of the resource? In our third hour, Lance Valentine had a charter today, but I wanted to talk to him about using your electronics to fish. The reason I wanted to do that is he put a post online last week that created all kinds of interest. So I wanted to follow up on that. So we did that. And then, of course, Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner. I also did a Primal Outdoors podcast today. I talked with Nate Thomas of Hunt Club TV, huntclubtv.com. That should be done. I don't know. I'm fishing tomorrow and Friday, so maybe not till next week. Ace, how you doing, buddy? Ace says all days on the water are great days. Can't believe I can't get you to come fish with me, Ace. Hey, Jeff, tick, 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 tick. 3 more days. Linda says, when I was a youngster, when a storm was coming, you had to hurry up and put a minnow out of the docks. No kidding. We caught walleye. No, I believe it. We've had to put a minnow out off the dock. Yes, before a storm, walleye will get a little crazy. And walleye are known to turn off and on like a switch. That's one of the reasons they drive me so crazy and one of the reasons I love them so much. I thought the fish turned off yesterday midday, but what happened was the school moved further east and I had to find them again. Once I got back into the school, we started picking up fish again. Lance does know his stuff. Lots of guys out there that are great with electronics. Glad to know these guys. Scott Hand said there are nets just north of the Cigar, and they run a good 1/4 mile to the east, 18 to 20 feet of water. Many boats ran over them, which is fine unless you get too close to a buoy ball net marker in the middle. Yes. And the net that I trolled into 2 weekends ago, I don't know how, but I trolled right into it. I didn't get my prop in it. I had 8 rods out, 8 lines out, and I only lost 1 bait. I was pretty darn lucky. Brian says, "Hey, Mike, does your wife fish?" Yeah, not so much. Not so much. I'm taking 2 of the grandkids out tomorrow, and I said, "Do you want to go with us?" And she said, "No, I think that's a grandpa thing. You and the grandkids." Brian said, "I've got stuck in storms because of fishing going crazy." Yeah, I get it. when you're out there and the fish are going on a kamikaze bite just before a storm, you might be tempted to stay out there an extra 20 minutes will be sometimes is just enough to get you caught in the storm. Like we did 3 weeks ago tonight on Wednesday Night Live fishing out of Linwood Beach Marina. Storms aren't bad. I mean, you can take a heck of a storm. If you know how to ride it out, if you got a seaworthy boat, if you don't have lightning, you can ride out a 20-minute downpour with heavy wind. Just point your bow into it and just bob up and down with it. Starts crashing lightning around you. That's a different story. But by the time you get to that point, you're stuck. I mean, you're in it. You're in it. Really interesting when you're in an angler quest, which sits about 9 feet off the water, and you got your rod holders above you, the rocket launcher, and you got rods above your head that stick 15 feet into the air. Oh, Art, you're so funny. She used to fish until she caught Mike. That was a real catch. Arthur, Arthur, Arthur. Should I get into this or not? No, I will approach it from a different angle. You'll notice with this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, if you listen closely, the open of each hour. My announcer comes on, Ken Hunter, time now for Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine, yada, yada. Mike, Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by. This weekend, for the first time, you will hear the addition of Offshore Tackle and Rapid River Knife Works. And if you listen real close, there's a company that's not there anymore. So partnerships come and go. I've been doing this a long time, and I try not to let things like that bother me or get to me. But every once in a while, one does. So I just keep plugging away, just keep chugging away, just keep finding good partners to work with. And I'll tell you what, right now, I am blessed with some very, very good partners. Oh, what else? The website for Miller, Don Miller's, millers-sportfishing.com. For Andrew Cumtus is outdoordriven.org. Larry Jennings, jonahjigs.com. Lance Valentine, teachingfishing.com. Me, Mike Avery, outdoors.com. You're asking about something else I want to talk about. The Angler Quest dealer meeting. Let me check my calendar here. Is that's July. Next, well, I think Sunday actually. Sunday starts the Angler Quest dealers meeting in St. Louis, Michigan. I will be over there Tuesday, which is August 1st. I will shoot some video of what the 2024 Angler Quests look like. There will be some changes. Art's got to go let the dog out. All right, see you Friday, Art. You got it. You got it, Tim. Exactly. You got it. You nailed it. Yes. Scott says a full canopy on the Angler Quest has weathered some good storms this year, and everyone is high and dry on the couches up front. Great boats, aren't they, Scott? I can't say enough about them. And I think Jeff nailed it here. Sometimes a partnership evolves into a friendship, and those are the ones that can feel personal if they end. Yes. Or if you get a situation where you have a long-term partnership and there's a change in leadership or a change in personnel, and the change in personnel results in a change in philosophy where when they come in, they immediately question what their predecessors were doing and do a change of course. And sometimes in those cases, there's nothing you can do about it. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. You couldn't have done anything more. Some things are just out of our hands. And, and I just got to deal with them. Go out and find new ones. Dave's running a little bit late. That's okay, Dave. Always a pleasure to have you along with us. How are you? Scott, where did you fish Saturday? I know you went north. I know you were fishing crawlers. I'll tell you where we went. We didn't fish deeper than 6 feet of water. Number 7 flicker minnows. Hey, I was asking Lance Valentine about this today on the show. I said, Lance, a few years ago, flicker shads were the hot bait on Saginaw Bay. And of course, before that, it was Hottentots. Then it was flicker shads. I said, now flicker minnows. I said, Lance, why are flicker minnows so hot these days and flicker shads not so hot? I said, is it the fact that anglers are just always looking for something new? We're fickle. Or has the forage base actually changed on Saginaw Bay to more resemble the flicker minnow over the flicker shad? He says he thinks it is a forage base issue. He says they thinks they're feeding on more perch, which are longer and skinnier. Well, I'd like to think so, Linda. Ed, profile on what? What? But whatever I've lost, Linda, I'm going to gain 2 or 3-fold. At least that's the plan. Ed, profile, question mark, profile. Help me out. I'm not picking up on that one. You'll send me some deeper water numbers. It should be a good run from your dock. Good run meaning a long run or a short run? Gotcha, Ed. Thank you. Profile matches the bait. Yes, exactly. Scott, where we're fishing right now, amen, Tim. So where we're fishing right now, Scott, is you know that real super skinny water we were in? If you take that out, that's where I've been. You got it, Jeff. Brian Aubrey says we got 32 fish during the tournament. Now, 32 fish, that was, I think, the best catch of anybody for the Angler Quest Owners Tournament. 32 fish during that tournament and the humps in 34 feet of water. That's a long run. I'm going to pass. I appreciate it then, Scott. A long run. I don't think, other than when I used to fish out of Augrey or Caseville, Brian, I don't think I've ever fished 34 feet of water in Saginaw Bay. 33 if you count the perch. 34 feet of water is a lot of water on Saginaw Bay. Tomorrow, I'll be fishing 13 feet of water. Honestly, if I could fish 10 feet of water or less the whole summer, I would do it. And I kind of have for the most part. Got a late start this year, waiting on that boat. I don't expect that's going to happen next year because, I mean, if I can, I'll hang on to the boat that I have this year. I love that boat. It's the perfect setup. It's all dialed in and ready to rock. Don't know if that's going to be possible, but if so, I'll just hang on to it. I've already got somebody who wants to buy it. Initials CP. Dave, good evening. Oh, I gotcha. I had to think about that one for a minute. I gotcha. Hey, John Sullivan of Lure Lipstick, lurelipstick.com. How are you? John's a great guy, great product, great Michigan based family owned company. Do you have temp readings when fishing? It was 77. It actually hit 80 yesterday, Linda. I got a couple of projects, potential projects I'm working on with John. If they are supposed to come to fruition, they will. Either way, John, you're a great guy, great product, and I respect what you have done. Tim just got back from busting some clays, blew the dust off the old shotgun. That sounds fun. I bet it was hot and muggy out there tonight, though, Tim. I don't know where you are. The guy who I said wanted my Angler Quest, whose initials are CP, I'm not telling you who it is, but somebody just said, with the initials of CP, said, I'm patiently waiting. Because he's actually fished off that boat. Yes. Tim says, yes, it was hot. Oh, you're more than welcome, John. I first became aware of lure lipstick. A friend of mine from way, way back was involved peripherally with like one of the original people who started the whole thing. And he gave me a heads up. He said, Mike, he says, there's this company at the time they were in Bay City. He said, I think you should reach out to him and learn more about him. And that's kind of what got that ball all rolling. Mike Thorman of the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation, right, Mike? He says, come tree a bear with us. Are you running dogs when it's this hot, Mike? If you are, I bet it's first thing in the morning. I would love to, Mike. I will tell you this. My daughter is getting married in about 5 weeks. And there is very little, if no, free time in the next 5 weeks. So there's not much that's going to happen around here other than maybe an occasional sneaking out on Saginaw Bay. Aside from the regular routine and the scheduled stuff, there's not much that's going to happen. So I appreciate the invitation. I would love to do that. I don't think it's going to happen here anytime in the next few weeks. Hey, Ruben, how are things in Colorado? Tim says, and Tim is like a realist. He's a realist. He said, we have used lure lipstick and I was proven wrong when it actually worked. Hello, Barry. How are you? Thanks for joining me on this edition of Wednesday Night Live. John Sullivan's watching your comments going, Tim Binns, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you didn't say something else. Oh, what else? What else? I think Linda is window shopping at the Lure Lipstick website, which is lurelipstick.com. That's lurelipstick.com. She says they have some great stuff. Apparently not everybody agrees with that, Bernie. Like I said, sometimes a change in personnel or a change in leadership results in a change in philosophy and a change in direction. Can't fight that. People have the right to do with their business what they want. It's their business. And sometimes things just change. Mark says, were you able to speak with the lady who was walking her dog in the UP and the wolf attacked? The answer to that, Mark, is no. I've had somebody else reach out to her secondhand. I have not reached out to her personally because I don't know how. I don't know how to get in touch with her. But I've got people reaching out for me. She does not want to talk. She feels like she's been embarrassed by the DNR because from what I'm getting second and third hand, she is convinced it was a wolf, and the DNR is kind of leaning towards the fact it was a coyote, and she's kind of embarrassed, and I think she's mad about that. So I don't think she wants to talk about it. So I don't think I'm going to be able to talk to her. Marion, good evening. How are you? Interesting question from Ryan. Do your sorry, hold on. Do you limit your consumption of Saginaw Bay fish per the guidelines or just don't worry about it? I do limit my consumption, Brian. I don't eat any. I don't like fish. I'm not a fish eater. I'll catch them all day long and give away a ton of them throughout the summer. But I don't worry about going over the consumption guidelines because I don't eat them. I'm not a big fan of fish. I know it's good for you. I know it's healthy. When it's cooked up right, it's wonderful. Just not a fish eater. Now I'm looking at something right now. Okay. And I'm going to change the framing with about another 6 minutes to go. There. The framing on what I see on my streaming platform and what I see on Facebook is different. I always go back at these, look at these things. I go, there's too much room between my bald head and the top of the frame. And being an old video and broadcast guy, that bothers me. Bernie says, now I've never even thought of this. Bernie says there's nothing better than a walleye BLT. I never thought of that. I'm sure it's good, but I never thought of it. Yeah, I just don't have a taste for fish, which seems kind of crazy, but I don't. But that's good for the people who fish with me because they almost always go home with fish. Well, if we've caught fish, they go home with fish. Good evening, Lost Glove. How are you tonight? Remind me, Lost Glove, are you a working crop farmer or are you like a an orchard or what? And the reason I'm asking is I'm asking about the weather and the rain. Tim says my eyes are at the top third line now. How are they now, Tim? What about now? It didn't a minute, but see, I'm far more picky than you guys. Probably, I don't, Kevin. I don't know your background. Maybe you're a broadcast guy too, but I tend to be far more picky. John Sullivan, listen to this, John. Because you came on Wednesday Night Live tonight and spoke up, Linda is now placing an order on your website, lurelipstick.com. So chiming in tonight, John, was certainly worth your while because I think it's like a $500 order, isn't it, Linda? And I agree with you, Mark. Even if it was just a coyote, it would be a great story because when you're walking your dog down a dirt road in the UP, and even if it is a coyote comes out and attacks your dog, and you as the dog owner get in a scuffle with the critter, yes, I think it's a great story. Lost Glove, a market garden, garlic mostly, so you have no vampires around your place. Ed says if we do get out, CP is going to have to take everything home with him because you've got a freezer full of walleye right now, don't you? Scott Keatsman of Linwood Taxidermy, linwoodtaxidermy.com. See, John Sullivan, you're having a good night, buddy. Scott says he's used lure lipstick in the Tittabawassee while jigging walleye. They would not touch the jig unless it had lure lipstick on it. Coincidence? Scott says. Tim says it had to be a wolf. Oh, Linda says, no. It's not a $500 order. It's a $1,000 order. Good for you, Linda, and good for you, John Sullivan. So what's coming up? All right, I said I'm fishing with the grandkids. This is all weather permitting. Fishing with the grandkids tomorrow. Fishing with Art Lewis, Dixie Dave Miner, and Michael Hensley, Saturday. Trying to get Craig and Ed out here sometime in the next several days as well. We also, my bear meat is done from Michigan brand. I just have to pick it up. That's Brats and Burger. My buddy Doug Cook is going to be glad to hear that because he'll be my first stop. We're trying to do a Wednesday night live at the Michigan brand plant, just working out details. Linda says, hey, what's up with that unique shape, the hook on those jigs? Mike is going to cringe. I'll tip it with a crawler. The eyes suck him up. Linda, I don't mind crawlers, honestly. That's mostly, it's like 90% joke, 10% irritating people to see how pissed off they get about it, and 5% just screwing around. Elmer, good question. Can you shoot a coyote if you're carrying? Elmer, if you have a valid hunting license and you are allowed to shoot where you are, meaning here in the city I'm right now, we would not be able to because you can't shoot in the city. Elmer, you can. You can. Remaining just got put back a few days. Tim says it's time to start planning fall food plots. I'm going to have Rich Krazan of Killer Food Plots on next week. Bernie says he had a granddaughter get married in June of this year. That means we're old, Mike. Bernie, you might be. I'm not. Dave says there's a lady north of Gladwin been attacked by a coyote twice this year. Checking her property. She raises chickens, even has a livestock guardian dogs. Tim says you can't shoot from the road, though. There's so many rules and regulations. Honestly, it's hard to keep track, isn't it? I feel like this. That's what I feel like. I feel like it's time to wrap this all up. A couple more comments. Saturday Fishing Live. Good point, Kevin. All right, my friends, have a great night. I'm going to be on the water tomorrow. And then this cost me some dollars, some money. Thanks for joining me on this edition of Wednesday Night Live. My name is Mike Avery. The website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Bring on the maker's mark. Amen. The website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Don't hesitate to reach out. Love to hear from you. Stay cool. Thanks for joining me on this edition of Wednesday Night Live.